And look.
The nation's largest bank is being hit with a record fine. JP Morgan Chase has to pay $920 million, manipulated the market for precious metals and U.S. Treasuries.
The bank that paid the largest fine in CFTC history for manipulating precious metals is still one of the banks that helped set the global gold price today. Not alleged, admitted. Their head gold trader went to federal prison, and they're still in the room. Your financial advisor probably been telling you for years that gold was dead money. No dividends, no yield. Park it in a savings account and be patient. Meanwhile, the central banks that literally print the currency are stacking physical gold at a pace not seen in the modern record. Here's the quick. Gold, roughly a year ago, was in the high 2000s. Today, north of 5,000. That's about a 70+% move. If you put $100,000 into gold a year ago, that position is now worth roughly $174,000. That same 100 grand in a high yield savings account at 5%, about $105,000. That's a $69,000 gap in 1 year. Your savings account bought you a nice dinner. Gold bought you a year of mortgage payments. And here's where I'm going with this. There's a room in London where gold prices were set behind a locked door for 85 years. And I'm going to show it to you and how it all started. But first, let me show you who's sitting at the table today and what they just got caught doing. And right now, if you can, pull up your retirement account. I don't know, maybe you got it on your phone or something, but look at your allocation. If you're like most retirees that I talk to, your precious metals position is 0. That's worth knowing before we go any further. Because here's who's sitting at the table right now. JP Morgan Chase. They're one of the direct participants in the LBMA gold price auction, the electronic benchmark that replaced the old London gold fix in 2015, and I'll get to that. But in 2020, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission hit them, JP Morgan, with the largest fine in agency history, $920 million. Their traders placed hundreds of thousands of fake orders in the gold and silver markets over 8 years to move prices in their favor.
JP Morgan metals traders have been charged with alleged market manipulation. Wilfred, you've been digging into this story all day.
2 current and 1 former JP Morgan precious metals traders have each been charged with alleged spoofing, market manipulation and fraud between 2008 and 2016.
2 of their metal desk leaders went to federal prison. 4 years later, regulators hit them again. Roughly another $500 million in penalties across 3 agencies for continued surveillance failures.
They ironically said that part of the issue was as they were changing their hardware to accommodate for these higher volumes.
The FBI's assistant director in New York said, and I want you to hear the exact words, for nearly a decade, a significant number of JP Morgan traders and sales personnel openly disregarded U.S. laws. Openly. They weren't hiding it from each other, just from you. And JP Morgan, they weren't alone. In 2014, Barclays got hit with a $26 million fine after one of their traders manipulated the gold fix to avoid paying a client $3.9 million. He got banned from financial services for life. Deutsche Bank settled manipulation lawsuits and agreed to hand over evidence against the other banks. This wasn't one bad actor, this was the culture. And after all of that, the billion-dollar fine, the prison sentences, the second round of penalties, JP Morgan is still at the table, still helping set the benchmark price of gold. That's like catching your accountant embezzling, sending him to jail, and then once he gets out, you hire him back to do your taxes. Now, after those second round penalties, JP Morgan described their response as enhancements to their market conduct compliance program. That's institutional language for we got caught, said we fixed it, didn't fix it, got fined again for not fixing it, and now we're calling the whole thing an upgrade. That's what they meant by enhancement. That's like calling a car crash an unplanned deceleration. It's a lie dressed up for a press release. So the question isn't whether gold prices have ever been manipulated. Regulators and courts have already documented that. The question is what the people who help set the price know right now that you don't. So let me show you what they're doing with their own money. From 2022 through 2024, central banks bought roughly 3,100 tons of gold, about double what they bought in the mid-2010s. In the World Gold Council's 2025 survey, nearly every central bank said they expect global reserves to keep rising. Almost half said they plan to buy more themselves. How many plan to sell? 0. And here's the piece that puts the motive on the table. In 2022, the West froze roughly $300 billion of Russia's reserves overnight. That same year, central bank gold buying doubled. That's the most expensive coincidence in monetary history. The people who print the money are trading it for gold, and your advisor has been telling you to hold cash. Does that math work for anyone else, or is it just me? If your financial plan assumes the system always works the way it's supposed to, ask yourself, why are central banks building an escape hatch? Poland's central bank governor has openly called gold a matter of national security and keeps stacking over 100 tons in a single year, with new domestic vaults being built to store it at home. Not in London, not in New York, at home. India repatriated 100 tons from the Bank of England back to domestic soil. When NATO countries and emerging economies are simultaneously building vaults and shipping gold home for national security reasons, that's not a portfolio opinion. That's a signal flare. Now, here's where the pricing story gets personal. Imagine a pizza shop that sells 1,000 vouchers every day, but they only bake 10 actual pizzas. 99% of customers just trade the vouchers back and forth. Nobody asks for real pizza. The system, it works great until 11 people show up at the counter and say, hey, give me a pie. That's how the main gold exchange in America works. It's called COMEX, and it's primarily a futures market. Most positions get closed or rolled. Delivery, that's the exception, not the norm. China's Shanghai Gold Exchange is far more physical forward. The World Gold Council reported SGE withdrawals of roughly 1,687 tons in 2023. When the paper price and physical demand pull in different directions long enough, the repricing doesn't happen politely. It shows up as spiking premiums, delivery delays, and widening spreads between what the screen says gold costs and what it actually costs to hold a bar in your hand. That's the collision nobody's preparing your retirement account for. Listen, I'm just a guy who buys houses for a living, but even I know that when there are more people at the table than there is food on the plate, the price of that food goes up. And the people at the head of the table, the central banks, they're not sharing. Now let me show you the room I was talking about, because once you see where this started, you'll understand why it never really stopped. For 85 years, from 1919 to 2004, the global gold price was set in a formal process that started at N.M. Rothschild & Sons in London, their offices at Newcourt, St. Swithin's Lane, directly across the street from the Bank of England. Different era, different caste, 5 bankers in a wood-paneled room watched over by portraits of European royalty. Each had a small Union Jack flag on their desk. They'd raise it when conferring with their trading rooms, and the price could only be set when all 5 flags came down. And a red light outside the door meant nobody else comes in. And before anyone reaches for the tinfoil to make me a hat, this is from the Rothschilds Archive's own public website. They hosted the centenary celebration. They published the photos. The source, it's there on your screen. That old system ended in 2004. In 2015, the mechanism was rebranded as the LBMA gold price, electronic, administered by ICE Benchmark Administration. But several of the same types of institutional players remain direct participants, including JP Morgan. So the benchmark changed its name. The question is whether it changed its nature. You've seen this movie though, 2008, COVID. Institutions take the risks. You pay the bill. And someone on CNBC explains why it was your fault for not being prepared. You know, you've been reading fine print since before these people were born. You don't need permission to trust your gut. And here's the question nobody is asking. If central banks are absorbing roughly a quarter of annual mine supply, and the paper market is setting the price based on contracts that almost never result in physical delivery, what happens when those two realities collide? Because right now, the price is being set by people trading promises, and the physical gold is being stacked by people who stopped trusting promises. So here's your active defense playbook. And these are suggestions, not orders. You are making mortgage payments before these traders finished college. This is a menu, so to speak. First, the homework. Tonight, pull up your retirement account. Find the allocation to commodities or precious metals. If it's near zero, compare that to what central banks are doing. They're adding aggressively. You're at zero. That gap deserves 15 minutes of some honest research. Second, if you're building a war chest in physical metal, look at allocated segregated storage, not ETFs, not paper contracts, metal that sits in a vault with your name on it, that nobody can spoof or freeze. Third, the portfolio question your advisor isn't asking. The conventional wisdom says gold doesn't produce income, and that's technically true. But the roughly $69,000 gap between savings and gold over the last year isn't about yield. It's about inflation arbitrage. You see, you didn't need dividends. You needed your purchasing power to stop evaporating. Gold delivered that. So if your plan assumes the old rules still apply while every central bank on earth is rewriting them, that's a conversation worth having at the next meeting. Now, here's my honest read on where this is heading. This part, it's my assessment, but it lines up with everything we just walked through. Central banks watched $300 billion in reserves get frozen overnight. They're watching deficits that mathematically can never be repaid. And they're watching the same inflation, the same money printing, and the same currency games that you and I are watching. And they're choosing to hold the one asset no government can freeze, no hacker can delete, and no central bank can print more of. They're hedging against themselves. The question is whether your portfolio is on the same side of that trade, or the opposite. The fix doesn't stop at the London Vault, by the way. It works its way down through every middleman in the chain. And I put together a short checklist for you so you're not the last one holding the bag. 60 seconds. There's nothing for sale there. The video that you just watched, this is the value. HedgeTheFed.com is simply the next step if you want it. So here's your choice. Option A, look at gold over 5,000 and decide you missed it. Maybe it pulls back. I don't know. I'm not a fortune teller. Option B, open your account tonight. Look at that allocation and start the conversation. Because doing nothing while the most informed institutions on the planet do the opposite, that's the one move that guarantees you're the last to know. We don't wait. We don't hope. We defend. Now you know who's setting the price. But the manipulation doesn't stop at gold. 60 tons of counterfeit silver bars just hit the market, and most buyers can't spot them. They don't know what they look like. So I'm going to show you what they look like right here in this video. 60 tons. That's not a typo. And it's already on dealer shelves. You don't want to buy that by accident. So watch this right here before you buy anything.